My name is John Edens. I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Texas. I'm also a professor in the Department of Psychology at Texas A&M University, where I conduct a lot of research on a variety of mental health and forensic relevant topics. I've been at Texas A&M for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was a faculty member at Southern Methodist University. Prior to that, I was a faculty member at Sam Houston State University. And earlier than that, I completed a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship at the University of South Florida, specializing in forensic psychology. I received my PhD from Texas A&M actually in 1996 and ultimately returned there as a faculty member. I'm also the former Director of Clinical Training at Texas A&M, which I thankfully am no longer, having realized that one of my areas of expertise is not administrative work. My experiences in the mental health field are largely contributing to research in this area. I consider roughly 80 to 90% of my time being spent conducting research looking at the utility of instruments and procedures used in forensic mental health assessment and trying to improve the utility of the information that we're trying to provide to the courts and the correctional systems about psychological and mental health types of needs. The 10 to 20% of my time that is spent actively involved in real-world cases typically revolves around capital murder trials, where I am asked to comment frequently on the adequacy of various forms of mental health data that gets presented in those types of cases. I also occasionally consult with state agencies in regards to helping them evaluate different types of systems that they use, such as risk assessment scales that are part of things such as probation risk assessment strategies that get used. One of the things that makes this course somewhat unique is that as of this taping right now, I actually include a lot of interesting data-driven results that have yet to be published in scientific journals, so people will get some very cutting-edge findings regarding the use of this instrument to address forensic types of questions, and that is something that they probably won't get exposed to elsewhere. I also go through a variety of what I think are very interesting practical cases discussing the application of the PAI and its use in evaluating a variety of forensic cases that cut across capital murder trials, adjudicative competence cases, insanity cases, as well as cases related to the assessment of public safety officers. So I think that's something that you won't get anywhere else, because those are cases that I've been involved with over the years that I think help really flesh out some of the more interesting aspects of the research in this area. Some of the key concepts that I teach in the workshop are interpretive strategies in regards to making sense of what PAI profiles are telling us about the people that we're giving them to, particularly in the context of specifically forensic types of evaluations. There's a difference between giving someone a PAI who is facing capital murder charges than giving a PAI to a client who's coming in because that person is depressed. And my workshop focuses very heavily on the aspects of this instrument that are important to correctional and forensic types of contexts, and that also focuses on the important features that are different when you're trying to interpret the results in those particular types of settings. Some of the coolest things that I've gotten to do professionally, one is that it's pretty nice to get invited to go around the world talking about the work that I do. I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in Europe, Australia, and other countries and continents talking about things that I'm very interested and passionate about, research. I get asked to be involved in what to me are, again, very interesting cases where psychological testing and assessment data are being used and debated in terms of their relevance. So getting involved in very high-profile cases with very profound consequences is at some level a privilege to be asked to provide my input in regards to things where quite literally in some instances jurors are having to make life and death decisions that may be impacted about what they're told about the mental health status of people who they're making decisions about. One recent development that figuratively hit me in the face as I was preparing this workshop is that there has been a ton of research published on the PAI that is indirectly or directly relevant to its use in the types of things that I cover in my workshop that I needed to incorporate into this most recent presentation. There's an expanding research base that I hadn't even realized I had actually gotten a little bit behind on in terms of knowing the cutting edge literature that was coming out in regards to the use of the PAI with various types of populations. So it was very interesting to me to get myself really back up to speed in preparation for doing this workshop. One other interesting thing that I learned about the PAI in the course of preparing for this is that for mental health instruments and providing expert testimony, questions about whether or not evidence concerning these instruments is going to be allowed to be introduced into evidence are something that people who do work in this area are always interested in knowing about and concerned. Nobody wants to go into court and then be told, sorry, you're not allowed to say that. Your evidence doesn't meet admissibility requirements. And some of the work that we've been doing lately looking at the application of the PAI in these contexts, it's interesting to see that that is very rare that those types of things happen. People using the PAI going into court rarely have trouble having that testimony be introduced. And interestingly enough, even in situations where maybe there are reasons to be somewhat suspicious about what's being said, the bar seems to be somewhat low in regards to kicking out the PAI. What do I like to do? At its most simplest form, I like to drink beer and play poker. I think of myself as a very skilled poker player. The actuarial data from my performance playing poker would suggest that I'm actually a very adequate poker player, neither making nor losing large amounts of money. I'm also very much a craft beer enthusiast. In the last 3 years, I have tried approximately 2,700 different types of beer throughout my travels around the US and other parts of the world. But I'm not an alcoholic.